Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Munib Hamid with the news of this hour. Armenian President Armen Sarkisyan has removed its National Security Service Director Arkishti Keramyan from his post. This comes after Armenia's defense ministry said 30 more soldiers were killed in fighting with Azerbaijan over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. Earlier, France and the US and Russia announced to step up efforts to end fighting between Azeri and the ethnic Armenian forces. President Donald Trump has announced that the US will completely withdraw from Afghanistan by this year's end. In a tweet, President Trump said all American troops will be back home by the Christmas this year. The announcement comes on the 19th anniversary of American invasion of Afghanistan. Yemen's armed forces say they have captured a key military base from the Houthi rebels in the northern province of Jawf. A spokesperson for Yemen's army said the air raids paved way for forces to storm the base, killing dozens of rebels. Earlier, the coalition downed a drone fired by the rebels toward the Saudi city of Najran. In the United States vice presidential debate, Republican candidate Mike Pence and Democratic challenger Kamala Harris have clashed over Trump's handling of the coronavirus. Harris went after President Donald Trump's record on healthcare, economy to climate change and foreign policy. Responding, Vice President Pence defended the Republican administration and blamed China for the pandemic. The global cases tally has surpassed 36 million with over 1 million fatalities. India has registered 971 deaths and over 78,000 new cases overnight, with infections tally crossing 6.8 million. In Pakistan, 9 people have lost their lives to the virus overnight, taking the death toll to 6,544. News in detail after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. President Donald Trump has announced that the US will completely withdraw from Afghanistan by this year's end. The announcement comes on the 19th anniversary of American invasion of Afghanistan. In a tweet, President Trump said all American troops should be back home by Christmas. The Taliban have welcomed the development. In a statement, the group said it is a positive step towards the implementation of the Doha deal. Meanwhile, Russia said Trump's move is pre-election rhetoric to show his voters that he fulfilled his promises. Presidential advisor Zamir Kabulov said American military presence in Afghanistan is not improving the on-ground situation. Earlier, U.S. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien said the number of the troops will be cut down to 2,500 by early 2021. Armenian President Armen has removed its National Security Service Director Arkishti from his post. Sarkisyan has appointed Hambad Duzmyan as the acting director of the NSS.
Armenia says 30 more soldiers have been killed in fighting with Azerbaijan over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. The defense ministry said this has pushed the military death toll to 350 since the war started on September 27. Earlier, France, the United States, and Russia announced to step up efforts to end fighting between Azeri and ethnic Armenian forces. France's Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said representatives from the three countries will meet in Moscow on Monday to seek a ceasefire. Talking to a parliamentary commission, Le Drian said everyone needs to understand that stopping hostilities is in their interest. Armenia says Foreign Minister Zohrab Natsakanyan will also visit Moscow on Monday. However, the Foreign Ministry ruled out Natsakanyan's meeting with Azeri counterpart Ceyhun Bayramov. Meanwhile, Bayramov is meeting international mediators today in Geneva.
Now, in the U.S. vice presidential debate, Republican candidate Mike Pence and Democratic challenger Kamala Harris have clashed over Trump's handling of the coronavirus. More about the debate in this report.
Kamala Harris, who made her own unsuccessful run for the presidency, faced enormous pressure as she took the biggest political stage of her life. Harris went straight after President Donald Trump's record on healthcare, economy to climate change, and foreign policy. She said the Americans have witnessed the greatest failure in the country's history.
They knew what was happening and they didn't tell you. Can you imagine if you knew on January 28th, as opposed to March 13th, what they knew, what you might have done to prepare? They knew and they covered it up. The president said it was a hoax. They minimized the seriousness of it.
Responding, Vice President Pence defended the Republican administration and blamed China for the pandemic.
But I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first.
Pence also criticized Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, who have promised to mandate masks on federal property and encourage the practice nationwide.
We now know, because of great investigative journalism, that Donald Trump paid $750 in taxes. When I first heard about it, I literally said, "You mean $750,000? And it was like, no, $750. We now know Donald Trump owes and is in debt for $400 million.
The debate stood in stark contrast to last week's chaotic presidential debate between President Trump and Democratic nominee Joe Biden. It was the only vice presidential debate of the campaign, with Biden and Trump due for a rematch on 15th and 22nd of October.
Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin says there is a sharp anti-Russian rhetoric from U.S. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden. In an interview, President Putin said Russia will work with any U.S. leader. About Biden, Putin said he has been encouraged by the Democrats' comments on arms control treaty. New START is the last major nuclear arms pact between Russia and the United States, and the two countries have so far been unable to agree on a new treaty or an extension. However, he praised U.S. President Donald Trump for wanting better ties with Moscow. Moreover, Putin once again denied Washington's charge of Moscow's meddling in U.S. elections. The UK has joined France and Germany in threatening sanctions against Russia for the poisoning of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said the UK will work to secure sanctions against the responsible Russian officials. In a statement, Raab said the evidence that Navalny was poisoned by a Russian military-grade nerve is undeniable. Earlier, France and Germany accused Russia of involvement and responsibility for the poisoning. Both said they will seek to impose EU sanctions on those responsible for what they called breach of international norms. Meanwhile, the Kremlin said Russia was not developing any chemical weapons. The Kremlin said it is fully complying with its obligations under an international arms control treaty. Now, the European Union says it wants a post-Brexit deal with the United Kingdom, but not at any cost. This comes hours after British Minister Michael Gove said London wants an agreement with Brussels, but it will not be held hostage. European Council President Charles Michel said this after talking to British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. In a briefing to Parliamentary Committee, Gove said he will be happier to conclude an agreement. But he said Britain is stepping up preparations for a no-deal scenario when its transition deal with the EU expires. Prime Minister Johnson has set October 15th as a deadline for clinching a post-Brexit trade deal. A new crisis in negotiations has emerged after London decided to push ahead with its internal market bill. Now, the Belarusian opposition leader Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya says she is impressed by Germany's support for her people. She briefed media in Berlin following her closed-door meeting with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Hundreds of thousands have protested in the streets of Belarusian cities since the controversial election in August. Tsikhanouskaya said Merkel gave her great pieces of advice on how the opposition can get out of the political situation in Belarus. She said her people will consider their fight for democracy as an internal affair and urged Russia to let them be.
We don't want to say that Putin has to decide how to solve our problems. This is our internal problem, and it's only up to Belarusians to get out of this political crisis. So we want to invite him to be a mediator alongside with other leaders to be mediators in initiating dialogue between authorities and people.
Moving on, Yemen's armed forces say they have captured a key military base from Houthi rebels in the northern province of Jawf. A spokesperson for Yemen's army said Saudi-led Arab coalition supported the operation. The spokesperson said the development is a heavy blow to Houthi rebels' control of northern Yemen. He said coalition carried out precise airstrikes, destroying Houthis' positions. The spokesperson said the raid paved way for forces to storm the base and kill dozens of rebels in the fighting. Houthis have not yet commented on the claims. Earlier, the coalition destroyed a drone fired by the rebels towards the Saudi Arabian city of Najran. Now, the United Arab Emirates has reiterated its support for a two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. Minister for International Cooperation Reem bint Ibrahim al-Hashimi said the UAE-Israel deal will benefit the Palestinians. Al-Hashimi met with several Israeli officials to discuss the opportunities for cooperation in wake of the historic deal. At the meeting, both sides pledged to reinforce bilateral relations for mutual benefit. They also discussed cooperation in the fight against COVID-19. The Israeli Ministry for Regional Cooperation said it is focused on economic cooperation with countries in the region. Meanwhile, Kuwait's new Crown Prince Sheikh Mishal Al Ahmed Al Sabah has taken the oath of office in Parliament. The prince has pledged the Gulf Arab states' commitment to democracy and peace. In a televised remark, Sheikh Mishal said Kuwait will uphold its regional and international commitments. The prince said he will raise the banner of popular participation and promote tolerance to shun division. Earlier, the parliament unanimously endorsed Sheikh Mishal for the role. Now, Indonesian police have arrested nearly 400 demonstrators following protests against a new jobs law. The government says the new law is necessary to attract investment, but critics view it as pro-business. Demonstrations were staged all across the country while police detained 183 outside the parliament in South Sumatra. In capital Jakarta alone, police held around 200 protesters for questioning. In West Java province, authorities blocked streets leading to the local parliament building and city hall. Armed with Molotov cocktails, over 3,000 protesters attempted to reach the heavily guarded building. The new job creation law is expected to bring radical changes to Indonesia's labor system. The demonstrators say the new law will cripple the labor rights and harm the environment. Meanwhile, the UN has condemned an attack that killed 25 internally displaced people in Burkina Faso on the 4th of October. In a statement, UN Refugee Agency's representative said civilians seeking safety are paying with their lives instead. The UNHCR reported an armed group attacked a convoy of 46 people in central northern Burkina Faso. It said the militants separated the band from the group and executed them. The official said the UNHCR is dejected by news of this brutal act. He said a UN partner, ICAHD, has been providing the survivors with psychological support. Mali's military junta has released 12 people, including former Prime Minister, held after the 18th August coup in the country. In a statement, the coup group announced the release of former Defense Minister, civilians and military officers. The National Council for the Salvation of the People is responsible for military coup in Mali, which invited severe backlash from the world. Mali's interim prime minister announced the new cabinet 2 days earlier, leading to lifting of some sanctions from the country. But West African leaders have demanded the dissolution of CNSP with the complete removal of sanctions. Meanwhile, 2 ISIS suspects have appeared in a federal court in Virginia to face charges of terrorism offences. Alexander Koti and El Shafi face trial over the killing of 4 American hostages. In a press briefing, Attorney General Zachary Terwilliger said the defendants were apprised of the charges against them. They are alleged to have detained or killed Western hostages in Syria, including 2 U.S. journalists and 2 aid workers. An 8-count indictment includes a list of tortures the 2 suspects inflicted on their captives. The pair, known as the Beatles, grew up in the UK, but London was withdrawn their citizenship. A former U.S. police officer charged with murdering George Floyd has been released from jail in Minneapolis. A spokesperson for the Minnesota Department of Corrections confirms he is no longer in their custody. The court records show Derek Chauvin posted a $1 million bond for conditional bail. Conditions include prohibitions against working in law enforcement and contact with Floyd's family. Chauvin is also required to surrender any licenses or permits for firearms. The former police officer is charged with 2nd and 3rd degree murder in Floyd's death. In a statement, attorney for Floyd's family said Chauvin's release is a reminder that they are still far from achieving justice. It's time for a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back now. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern's party is projected to be 1 seat short of being able to govern alone. An opinion poll shows the party has a double-digit lead over its rival. Labour Party's leader and Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern's popularity has taken a 4% hit. Ardern said she is keeping an eye on the polling, but she is pretty happy with the numbers. The opposition National Party has slipped down by 1 percentage point at 32%. Speaking to News, opposition leader Judith Collins said she believes it's still anybody's race. Now, the EU Commission has signed a contract with the US drug maker Gilead for supply of up to 500,000 treatment courses for REMDESIVIR. The Commission says there are 37 signatories to the agreement. It says the signatories include all EU countries and the UK, 6 Balkan candidates and potential members of the bloc. In a statement, Gilead said a joint procurement agreement will enable rapid and equitable access to REMDESIVIR in Europe. It said the agreement covers purchases of REMDESIVIR over the next 6 months and can be extended. European countries are currently using REMDESIVIR for treating COVID-19 in adults and patients with pneumonia. Gilead said it will begin fulfilling orders from October 12th. Now, the global tally of coronavirus cases has surpassed 36 million, with over 1 million fatalities. India has registered 971 deaths and over 78,000 new cases overnight. How the virus is wreaking havoc around the globe in this report.
Coronavirus cases and deaths continue to rise across the globe as nations ramp up struggles to contain the spread. The Americas remain the theater with grimmest COVID-19 pictures. The US continues to lead the world in coronavirus numbers with more than 7.5 million infections and over 211,000 deaths. However, President Donald Trump has called the COVID-19 disease a blessing from God for him.
I view it different. It's a cure. For me, I walked in, I didn't feel good. A short 24 hours later, I was feeling great. I wanted to get out of the hospital. And that's what I want for everybody. I want everybody to be given the same treatment as your president, because I feel great. I feel like perfect. So I think this was a blessing from God that I caught it. This was a blessing in disguise.
In Latin America, Oxfam's regional director says the COVID-19 has dragged millions of people from the middle classes back to below the poverty line. Over the past 60 days, 11 countries and territories in the Caribbean have moved from moderate to the intense transmission of the virus. Brazil has passed the mark of 5 million confirmed cases. The country approaches the 150,000 deaths in the second most deadly coronavirus outbreak outside the US.
Brazil this week reaches the sad mark of 5 million COVID-19 cases. That number is much greater due to low testing levels and the under-notification of the disease. Very soon we will reach 150,000 deaths, a frightening number. With regards to this, we are seeing the authorities easing social distancing more and more, despite the number of cases.
Meanwhile, in Europe, France has reported over 18,000 new cases, a new high in single-day infections. Italy has imposed new restriction measures as infections in the country rose to 62,000. Czech Republic has also reported more than 5,000 new cases, highest one-day tally since pandemic started.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, the number of COVID-19 active cases have reduced to 8,015. The Health Ministry says out of over 316,000 countrywide cases, more than 302,000 have recovered so far. The ministry said 9 more people have lost their lives to the virus overnight, which raises the death toll to 6,544. It said 583 people tested positive in a day. The ministry said over 139,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while over 100,000 have been reported in Punjab so far. The National Command and Operations Centre says 76 COVID-19 patients across the country are on ventilators. Pakistan is remembering the victims of the October 8th earthquake in 2005 that killed over 80,000 people. More than 4 million other people were displaced by the 7.6 magnitude earthquake that shook the nation. The earthquake was among the deadliest to ever hit the region. In some places, whole sections of towns slid off cliffs and entire families were killed. The Muzaffarabad in Azad Jammu and Kashmir suffered severe devastation. The town of Balakot in the northern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province was almost completely destroyed. Damage also was reported in northern India and Afghanistan. Now, Hurricane Delta has re-strengthened into a Category 2 storm in the Gulf of Mexico. The U.S. National Hurricane Center said the storm could become a major hurricane tonight. The center said the hurricane will move over the central Gulf of Mexico later today with winds of 100 miles per hour. Earlier, the hurricane passed through Mexico's top Caribbean resort, Cancun, causing less than feared damage. Thousands of residents and tourists had already retreated into shelters. Troops cleared roads as fallen trees partially blocked access to Cancun Strip of 5-star hotels. The Miami-based weather forecaster said the hurricane is projected to move inland on the U.S. Gulf Coast by Friday night. Mexico's Nobel Prize-winning scientist Mario Molina has died at the age of 77. Molina's environmental research body said he died of unexpected cardiac problems. In 1995, Molina became Mexico's first winner of Nobel Prize for Chemistry. He was awarded prize for his work on threat to the ozone from chlorofluorocarbons. One of Mexico's most eminent scientists, Molina was considered a global authority on climate change. In 2008, he was appointed as scientific advisor to U.S. President Barack Obama. Now, scientists are collecting samples from the melting Arctic region to know more about the underlying ecosystem. More about this research in this report.
As the Arctic melts and reveals swathes of ocean previously impenetrable to scientific investigation, the race is on to document the rich ecosystem lying beneath it. Scientists are using new technologies that can identify the species currently roaming the frigid northern waters. They hope that doing so will help build a case to designate large parts of the ocean as marine protected zones. Researchers are using environmental DNA sampling to detect whether an animal has visited certain waters by the sample it has left behind.
The Arctic is quite rich in biodiversity, and it provides habitat for a whole number of different species, many of which are very specific to those areas. And at the same time, it's actually an area that needs much more research. There's a lot about the Arctic that we don't know, and a huge knowledge gap. So we need to really focus our attention on understanding this ecosystem much better.
Through this research, scientists aspire to reach a reference point for how global warming has affected species distributions as the seas hot up. They believe the Arctic can be completely free of sea ice in the summer within decades. This will make it a highly attractive route for transcontinental shipping from Asia to the US and Europe. Increased shipping brings with it a risk of accidents and oil spills.
Much of the Arctic ecosystem is unprotected, and this is really quite a concern because as the ice recedes and this whole area warms and is changing so rapidly, it means that it's now quite vulnerable to the impact of human activities. And that's why we really need a very strong global ocean treaty to protect these areas.
Currently, there are no environmental protection areas covering the international waters around the North Pole. Environmentalists hope that evidence of a teeming ecosystem in the Arctic will help bolster the case for halting the advance of human activity.
Now, the European Parliament has voted in favour of the EU climate law. The legislation calls for 60% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2030. The vote also approved a requirement by the EU to remove as much carbon dioxide as it produces every year. The Parliament also pledged more ambitious goals to be climate neutral by 2050. Lawmakers hope that they will put pressure on the countries to keep the target above 55%. The European Council, under the presidency of Germany, must also ratify the goal. A World Championship surfer had a close encounter with a shark in New South Wales, Australia. A patrol drone belonging to lifeguards at Shapes Beach captured the close call. The footage shows Matt Wilkinson paddling on his boat as a shark surfaces behind him, later turning away. In a press release, Wilkinson said he heard a splash while cruising, but he could not see anything. He added the drone then came down and told him that there was a dangerous shark in the area. The drone footage is part of a new program for lifeguards designed to monitor sharks and alert beach goers of any danger. Now, finding a suitable work to earn a square meal in a war-torn Syria is an uphill task even for men, let alone women. But one woman has broken the barriers of the glass ceiling. Let's have a glimpse of her struggle in this report.
Both men and women gaze at taxi driver Kinana Al-Bunni. When they get into the car, she has been driving through Damascus streets since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. After graduating from a commercial institute, she realized that working indoors did not suit her and decided to work as a taxi driver instead. She first started this career 10 years ago by giving free lifts to friends on their way to the Lebanese capital. When the border closed to curb the spread of the coronavirus pandemic, she started working for a private taxi company in Damascus, a profession usually opted by men.
There is a belief here in this country that women do not know how to drive. So I try to change this idea and show that a woman can drive and sometimes drive better than a man.
The 37-year-old single mother does not only want to provide an income for her 2 children, but also to change attitudes regarding female drivers. When she first sat behind the wheel, her family opposed the idea, saying that society would be against it. But the real support came from her friends.
They opposed the idea a bit. It surprised them. It can't be. How is that possible? In our family, nobody is like this. Our society refuses this. A female driver? Fine, you took a driving course, but to give rights to men, to women, it is not nice. I told them no. This is what I chose and this is my future. Of course, I am looking for more than this.
Kinana Al-Bunni has proved that strong conviction coupled with hard work cannot stop anyone from pursuing their goals. Now she dreams of owning her own car or taxi company.
Well, now a British auction house sells the skeleton of Stan for $31.8 million. Stan is one of the largest known Tyrannosaurus rexes. The pre-sale estimate for Stan was thought to come in around $8 million. Stan is 40 feet long and 13 feet high. He is also notable for 2 fused vertebrae scientists have identified in his neck. The vertebrae suggest the dinosaur broke his neck and survived during his lifetime. Most T-Rex skeletons are held by museums and private institutions. The auction house Christie says it was an opportunity for a private collector or institution to acquire the bones. The anonymous winning bid was received over the phone. The Universal Pictures has suspended the production of Jurassic World sequel after a few people on the set contracted COVID-19.
In a tweet, director Colin Trevorrow said all tested negative shortly after. But Trevorrow said due to safety protocols, they are suspending the work for 2 weeks.
All right. Yeah, she recognizes somebody up there. Yeah, these people are...
Filming on the dinosaur adventure movie resumed in England in July under stringent protocols. Trevorrow did not identify who had tested positive on the movie set. Earlier, Universal Pictures said they were pushing back the release date for Jurassic World Dominion by 1 year to June 2022.
In business stories now, European stocks are trading higher with investors keeping an eye on ongoing stimulus discussions in the US. The major averages rose sharply after President Trump tweeted support for aid to airlines and other stimulus measures. The pan-European stock 600 climbed marginally in early trade. Travel and leisure stocks jumped by more than 1.5%. Frankfurt's DAX rose by almost 0.5%. CAC 40 in Paris also advanced fractionally. Italy's FTSE MIB rose by just above 0.5%. Earlier stocks in the Asia-Pacific also traded higher, with only Hong Kong Hang Seng lagging among regional markets. And now let's have a look at the weather updates. Well, that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News. Take care.